Okay, good morning, everybody. My name's Richard Hamilton. I'm Head of Business Development here at Centre for Assessment. Welcome to Cyber Essentials, an update for 2022, brought to you by CFA. We're a national certification body for Cyber Essentials and other standard, and we're part of The Growth Company, which is an innovative social enterprise based in Manchester. The purpose of this morning's webinar is to share with you some details about Cyber Essentials accreditation, including the changes that have been introduced to the scheme this year. We're delighted to have so many participants on the webinar today, and I hope you find it useful and informative. Before we start, please be aware that the session is being recorded and we will share the recording with all registrants later today. If you've got any questions as the webinar progresses, please do type them into the box at the bottom right of the screen. We will review your questions as we go and put as many of them as possible to the speakers towards the end of the session. Joining us today is Graeme, Business Development Manager at Centre for Assessment, who will talk through the Cyber Essentials accreditation process. But first of all, I'd like to introduce Chris, who is a Cyber Essentials technical expert here to share his knowledge and experiences with you. So over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Richard, and good morning, everybody, and thanks for giving up your time today. Hopefully you'll find this informative and insightful. So let's start off by talking about what is Cyber Essentials. Well, Cyber Essentials is an effective government-backed scheme that will help you protect your organization, whatever its size, against a whole range of the most common cyber attacks. It provides a minimum information security baseline that companies have to adhere to. But of course, you may decide to go further. This is only a minimum requirement. If you add more in, you become more secure. Cyber attacks come in many shapes and sizes, but the vast majority are very basic in nature, carried out by relatively unskilled individuals. They're the digital equivalent of a thief trying at your front door to see if it's unlocked. The advice from the National Cyber Security Centre is to prevent these attacks from happening by securing your business. And you get more information at the ncsc.gov.uk website. So as it states on the slide there, it was introduced in 2014. And it gives a basic guideline, if you like, for common threats. Also, if you would like to bid for central government contracts which involve handling sensitive and personal information or the provision of certain technical products and services, you will require Cyber Essentials certification. It could come in two flavors. It could be Cyber Essentials or it could be Cyber Essentials Plus. So Cyber Essentials is the basic standard. It is a self-assessment. This means that you are given a questionnaire with a series of questions that we will go through in a little bit more detail a bit later about your IT infrastructure. It's very simple. If you answer the questions correctly, you pass. If you don't, then you fail and you have to do it all over again. The assessment body is now IASME, and it's one assessment body that was condensed from 4 before, supposed to make the scheme a bit easier. I'll leave that one open to question. Cyber Essentials Plus is really ratifying what you say in your basic assessment, and it will be tested. So what happens is they will then come into your network. They will do what we call Nessus scanning of your network to ensure that what you have said in your assessment form is correct. Depending on the size of the company will depend on how many machines they will test. But it starts at 3 and it can go up to as many as 5, as I say, depending on how many end users you have. On these tests, they will try and download viruses onto your PCs just to make sure that they are catching these and they are not open. They will also check that everything has been updated and everything is current. So what's new for 2022? Because like everything, they have to change things around. Obviously, with what's happening in the world over the last few years, more and more people are working from home. So home working is now part of the criteria. And if you have home workers that work from home on a regular basis, then they will come into the scope of the assessment. Also, they are now bringing thin clients into it. For those that don't know what thin clients is, this could be Citrix or Microsoft Remote or Virtual Desktop. And basically, a thin client is a computer that uses resources housed inside a central server, as opposed to you using your hard drive on your laptops or your PCs. A thin client will connect directly to the server-based environment that hosts its applications. And from there, they get the memory and they get the data, and nothing is stored locally on your devices. Password-based authentication sounds quite grand, and it is a new one that Cyber Essentials has now brought in. And basically what this means is to shift the passwords away from end users, which is a good thing because people tend to use common passwords, and place that instead onto the technical systems. So for example, you could use a password deny list. So stop people putting in password 123 or the favorite dog name and make them a little bit more robust. This also stops leaked passwords, and you can lock accounts after a certain amount of attempts. And this will stop periodic password expirations. Wireless devices. What do you mean by wireless devices? Well, that can really be mobile phones. It can be tablets. It can be anything that doesn't require a cable and connects directly to your infrastructure or your office in it. So this also now includes what we call in the trade BYOD, which is bring your own device. So if you don't have a company mobile, but you have your own device and you access emails or you access corporate data using this device, this will also come into scope. Two-factor authentication, or multi-factor authentication, as it's sometimes called. What this means basically is that you have two methods of authenticating who you are. So your first method is you will log on to your network with your username and your password. The second method then means that the network will send you a token, usually to your mobile phone, and it's usually a 6-digit PIN. And this just makes it a little bit more secure. But this is now a requirement for Cyber Essentials. If you're using Office 365 as your email and your document production system, then this comes incorporated in Office 365. And finally, cloud services are now included in scope. So cloud services is basically any software as a service that you may be using. I've already mentioned it may be Office 365. It could be Google Mail, Google Drive, OneDrive. It could be Dropbox, any accounting software, or any CRM. So anything that you may be using is now included in the certification. So we'll now come on to what you really have to do and the controls around about Cyber Essentials. And the thing is that when you are doing your basic Cyber Essentials, there's no gray areas in this. It is either right or it's wrong. It's as simple as that. So what you first have to do is you need to describe the elements of your organization which you want to certify. The scope could either be the whole organization or it could be a subdivision of the organization if that is required for tendering purposes. So for example, it could be the UK operation of a multinational company. And what is in scope are all computers, all laptops, and all servers. And that goes for all of these controls. Mobile phones and tablets, as I've already mentioned, are now included, as are firewalls and routers that you will use within the business to access the internet. Organizations or subunits are also included if they are required for certification. And we also need to know the locations and where everybody is based. But that doesn't include home users. We're not too concerned about them, just where your main offices are. So we'll move on to the first one, and I'll try and keep it very simple. I won't try and make this too technical. I know that not everybody on here will be IT trained, so we'll keep it pretty generic. First of all, we'll talk about firewalls and internet gateways. For those that you don't know, a firewall is a generic name for a software, which could be it could be on your laptop, but it could be a hardware physical device sitting on the edge of your network, which provides technical protection between your network and devices and the internet. And within the bounds of these controls, it will be described as a boundary firewall. And as I say, it could be physical or it could be virtual. If you want to secure your networks more and add in additional measures, then we would recommend you have a physical and a virtual device. Now we'll come on to secure configuration. Computers, by their nature and when they first arrive in your premises, are not secure upon default installation. An out-of-the-box setup can often include an administration account with a standard publicly known default password, one or more unnecessary user accounts enabled, sometimes with special access privileges, and pre-installed but unnecessary applications or services. All of these present a security risk. So what Cyber Essentials states basically is that you should only have things installed on your devices that you require. If you have pre-installed software that's not required, it must be removed. Plain and simple. And it also must be secured with administrator passwords that are not out the box and end user passwords that are secure and meet the required password profile or password standard, depending how you want to look at it. Currently, that sits at a minimum of 8 characters, which should be uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and special characters. Obviously, the more that you have, the more secure your accounts will become. The next thing we're going to come on to is security update management. What this means is that to protect your organization, you should ensure that all your software is always up to date. So you have to have all your devices set to auto update and make sure everything gets done straight away. And this has to include the latest patches and fixes. If you are using servers on your premises, then any critical or any high or any security patch must be installed immediately or within a given time scale, depending on what it is. But it's normally 7 days, but we recommend they are done immediately. If any of your devices are in scope, if any of your devices that you have are out of scope, and what is out of scope nowadays are Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 2003, Mac OS, Ubuntu 17.10, then these must be replaced and updated. And the reason they are now out of scope and therefore not recognized within the Cyber Essentials is because they no longer provide any security patches, fixes, or updates. Mobile phones and tablets, likewise, they must be later, not latest, but later models, and they must be at a software standard that is still being updated. So older iPhones, older Android devices will not be accepted and must be updated before you can go for Cyber Essentials. Security access controls. It's important that you only give users access to the resources and the data necessary for their roles. and no more than that. All users need to have unique accounts and should not be carrying out day-to-day tasks such as invoicing or dealing with emails whilst logged on as an administrator. And this is very clear on that. You cannot use administrator accounts for everyday work. So if you're an IT administrator, then if you're doing something on a device, you must log the user off, log on with your administrator password, update or do whatever you're doing, then you must log off, and then the user must log back on with their end user password. And if you're not doing things on user devices but do it on your own, it's equally important that the IT administrator does not do any work whilst logged on as an administrator. We're now going to talk about password-based authentication, and we touched on it very slightly earlier on. So all users require, all accounts require the user to authenticate, where this is done using a password, and the following protections should be used. Passwords are protected against brute force password guessing, so they must be secure passwords and they cannot be anything that is easily guessed. Technical controls are used to manage the quality of the passwords. Now, again, if you're using Office 365, these are built into the system, so that takes that requirement away from you. People are supported to choose unique passwords for their work accounts. So most companies will have password policies, and the password policy document should tell you what your password policy should be. As I said earlier, a minimum of 8 characters. There's an established process to change passwords promptly if the applicant knows or suspects the password or account has been compromised. So you have to put policies and procedures in place if you think you've been compromised. We've all heard of malware. We all know what malware is, but basically malware is generally used to steal or damage information. It's often used in conjunction with another type of attack, such as phishing. You've probably seen these coming in as emails. You know they're scams, you just delete them. Phishing is obtaining information by confidence trickery. And social network sites, which can be mined for information useful to hackers. So just on that, if you have your date of birth, if you have your mother as one of your friends on Facebook, if you have your favorite pet names on Facebook, then you need to be very, very careful that you're not using any of these as your passwords, because that is quite common. Personally speaking, I don't have my date of birth on Facebook because that's an easy way of getting part of your security information for your mobile banking, for etc. So by all means, leave when your birthday is, but don't have the year. It just makes it easy for people to get these information. Anti-malware solutions, which includes antivirus, are available from commercial suppliers. Some are free, but usually as complete software or support packages. Microsoft Defender is provided by Windows as their default security and anti-phishing and anti-malware package. And as Cyber Essential stands at the moment, this is okay, you can use that. But from a security point of view, I would personally like to see other antivirus software on your PCs. I just think they are better and give you better security. One thing to remember, malware is continually evolving. So it's important that suppliers include both malware signatures and heuristic detection facilities, which are updated as frequently as possible, normally daily. Anti-malware products can also help confirm whether websites you visit are malicious. So they are good to have on your network. So some tips before going for the test or presenting for certification. First one is to ensure all your systems and all your software have the latest software releases. Straightforward, quite simple. One that keeps catching people out is Adobe. Ensure that any Adobe you have is up to date and of the latest release. Autoplay must be disabled on all your devices. And the reason for this, if autoplay is not disabled, then anybody can come up to your PC, your laptop, your device, install an infected USB stick, and it will run onto your device and therefore get access to your network. So they must be disabled. And all users are up to date and everybody has the right permissions to access data. So you don't want somebody from the warehouse accessing your payroll data or your account data. So make sure everything is locked down to the people who need to have those permissions. There's a lot of talk about Cyber Essentials, and one of the main reasons for it, and one of the main reasons that companies go for certification, is because they need it to tender for commercial business. But there are also good reasons internally to get Cyber Essentials. The first thing is really, you know, your systems are in a good state and are at a required minimum standard. It also gives reassurance to your customers that you're taking your business seriously and any data that you may hold on them is protected. Likewise, it reassures your staff that you are putting systems in place to protect them and make sure they are safe and secure. Just like tenders, it can help you protect new business. If you get Cyber Essentials, you are able to put that onto your website and promote that you are taking these precautions. And lastly, as I've mentioned already, a lot of government contracts are now mandating that you have Cyber Essentials or you have Cyber Essentials Plus, depending on the level of the contract. Cost is always an important issue. And as of January this year, unfortunately, the costs have gone up. It used to be a flat fee of £300. Didn't matter what the size of your business. But as you can see from the slide now, if you have less than 10 staff, it's £300. If you have under 50 staff, £400. Under 250 staff, £450, and large staff over 250. There are also turnover requirements as well. But if you're in any doubt, then just ask CFA or somebody that can help you. Your IT company should be able to help you as well on that one. And all costs are excluding VAT. So for Cyber Essentials, we've seen the cost. Cyber Essentials Plus is slightly different because I've mentioned earlier on, Cyber Essentials Plus will test your network. Depending on the size of the network, these tests can take anywhere from an hour to maybe 3 or 4 hours, depending on how much they are testing. They're all done remotely. There used to be a requirement when Cyber Essentials first came out that either an assessor or a consultant like myself would need to come on site and just verify that you are who you say you are. Since lockdown, that doesn't seem to matter so much, and they can all be done remotely. So for Cyber Essentials Plus, it starts at £1,475 for a business that has less than 10 users. Now, I will point out that is a price that if you do it yourself. So you do all the certification yourself and you arrange it all yourself. It does mention this in the slide before. No, it doesn't. It's been taken out, so ignore that. It was in the slide earlier. We do offer consultation services whereby we will help you to fill in all your documentation, and we will arrange for all your tests to take place. So if you're looking at doing the Cyber Essentials Plus, get in touch and we can get you a price worked out how much it's going to cost. There is a facility where we will do a pre-scan of your network. And by doing the pre-scan, it means that we can tell you if there's any problems before you go to certification. If you go to certification and you fail straight off, you will need to redo it again. So the cost can basically double. So I hope that makes sense. If it isn't, then please ask any questions. And as it states there, put any questions into question box, and we will answer these as and when they come up during the course of the rest of the presentation. So that's all from me. My contact details are there. If you want consultation, you want to talk about anything that we've mentioned, then please get in touch with either CFA or myself directly. And now I'd like to pass over to Graeme Yeo from CFA, who will talk about how you're going about applying for Cyber Essentials. So Graeme, over to you.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Chris. That was great. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, as Chris said, my name's Graeme. I am Business Development Manager at Centre for Assessment. Just a little bit of a quick introduction about Centre for Assessment itself. So we've been a Cyber Essentials certification body for around 4 or 5 years now, but we also deal with a number of other certifications and accreditations. So, for example, we're UCAS accredited for a number of ISO standards, 9001, 14001, 27001, which you may have come across. We're also licensed by the Law Society of England and Wales to conduct their Lexicel assessments, a matrix standard, which is sort of DFE standard for training and education providers. So there's a whole raft of certifications that we provide. We've been going for around about 20 years now, so plenty of experience of doing that. And we're proud to be, as Richard mentioned earlier, we're proud to be part of the Growth Company, which is an award-winning accredited social enterprise. We're currently going through the gold mark process for that, for it to be a social enterprise. So just wanted to talk a little bit about some additional packages we offer apart from the assessment, and also how you can go about booking on our website as well, or otherwise. So as I say, you can just go ahead, which sort of Chris referred to earlier, and book the tests and go for them. Not everyone would necessarily want to do that. So a lot of people want a bit of support with this, and they might use a consultant like Chris, who can really come in and help, get you through the process. And we also have some support packages that you can buy as part of it. So the assessor sort of does a bit of hand-holding, as it were, through the process. So the self-assessment, the basic one, which gets verified by an assessor, we can include half a day of telephone support for that, up to half a day. It won't always be half a day required. And essentially the assessor will just sort of talk you through that questionnaire, interpret the questions for you, and maybe clear any issues up that you have, any misunderstandings there. And we can also provide support for the plus option as well. And they'll do a sort of pre-scan, make sure that you're ready, give you some suggestions about how you might address any issues that are identified as part of that. And you can have a retest as well, should there be any issues when you do the actual test, the certification test. You're in direct contact with the assessor throughout the process. So, as I say, they'll be on the phone to you. They'll be in direct contact with you. You're not having to go through the office or a sort of portal. You do use the portal to put the questions in, but you can still communicate with the assessor directly as well. The support packages, as I said, they're not necessarily suitable for everyone. So some people will have big IT departments, really strong IT departments, or IT providers who can help them with it. But maybe for smaller companies, or if you haven't used a consultant like Chris, or you need some extra assurance, maybe there's a deadline that you need it for a tender or a contract or something like that. These support packages can really help you get through and sort of make sure you're getting it right sooner rather than later, I suppose. So in terms of booking, there's a couple of options. The easiest way to do it is through our website, which is there on the screen. So centreforassessment.co.uk. And I've got some screenshots just to show you how to navigate that. It's fairly straightforward, but just a little explanation to go with it as well. So here's our website. And you might not be able to read that, a little bit small, but there's a tab tab on the left at the top there, or in the middle, which is certification. And if you hover over that, you've got your Cyber Essentials options there, which you can click on. And you can indeed browse some of the other services which we have available as well. This takes you to an application page. So you just pop in those details. The reason it asks for a mobile number and job title, obviously those wouldn't necessarily be required in all circumstances, but those are required to actually put you on the IASME portal. So those are needed to set everything up on the portal. And once you've registered, you get emailed the login details for that IASME portal, and those are required fields for that. So that's why we ask for those. And then once you've completed that, it takes you to another page which has the various options. So the price bands that Chris mentioned for the different size organizations, and also the plus options. Now, to complete Cyber Essentials Plus, you need to do the self-assessment first, and the tests need to be done within 3 months of each other. So it can be quite a more efficient way of doing it, maybe to do them both together at the same time. So for us, you can go in and book the basic. You just click on the details on the website, pop your card details in, and we'll send you over the login details. And then once that's completed, you can book the extra. But as I say, it has to be within 3 months. If you can't pay by card, or you're having trouble with the website at all, obviously just get in touch with us. We can arrange to send a manual quote or an invoice or something like that. There's plenty of bits on the website, but if you're getting stuck at all, do just get in touch. You can reach the team, might be able to help you, or you can contact me directly, or you can email us for assistance with that. But as I say, the website's fairly straightforward, and you should be able to navigate through that. And I think that's pretty much it from me. So I'll pass over to Harry Foreman, who's part of the business development team. He's got some details for the Q&A, and we'll see. I think there've been a few questions come in the box, so thanks for those.
Thank you very much, Graeme. That's brilliant. So yeah, we're delighted now to open up for questions. We've had a few questions come in during Chris and Graeme's talks there, so we will address those, but please do share any further questions, and we'll put as many as we can to Chris and Graeme now. So our first question, Chris, probably for you, is on average, how long does it take an organisation to achieve Cyber Essentials Plus accreditation?
Yes, thank you for that. That's a difficult one. It is a two-step process. So you have to get Cyber Essentials first. So the first process is to do your Cyber Essentials, and then the next process is then to get it tested. I would say probably about a month is about the average. But again, that depends on how busy the assessors are and how soon they can get around to it. But I would say probably a month is about normal.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. We've got a second question, probably for you again, Chris, from Dave. He's said that you mentioned a deny list for password-based authentication. How would you implement this in a Windows environment? Yeah,
thanks for that one, Dave. Password-based authentication is something that's just come in. What the guidelines are is that deny listing is one of the many tools that provide complete and comprehensive endpoint security. I know you can do it through Office 365 through the portal. I'm not sure how you would do it in a Windows environment. But if you want to get in contact direct, Dave, then I have a security expert who works for Unleashed who can get in touch with you and help you more on that one. But it is a new one that they brought in, and I know it's quite difficult if you don't have Office 365.
Okay, Thank you very much, Chris. Probably more of a question for you, Graeme. Have you seen an increased uptake in the scheme recently? If so, in which sectors?
Thanks. Yeah, I think we have seen a lot more inquiries lately. It's obviously it's been going for quite a few years now, Cyber Essentials, and it's the intention was always that it would be a requirement for government contracts. That's sort of grown over the years. So it wasn't required for all contracts, but it's more and more government contracts we're seeing that are requiring that now. So things like contracts with DWP, for example, getting people back into work, things like that. A lot of they use a lot of small, training providers and things like that, advice services. So it does tend to be, companies that are working with the public sector, not part of the public sector necessarily, but sort of delivering services like that, training and getting people back into work, things like that. Also, it's quite big in the legal sector as well. I sort of mentioned that we're a Lexel accreditation assessment body. That was included in the Lexel standard a few years ago in the latest revision. So a lot of solicitors firms will now be using that as well, using Cyber Essentials. I think the Law Society just saw that it was quite a good scheme to get people, the sort of basic Cyber Essentials hygiene, sort of at smaller companies and smaller firms.
Lovely. Okay, thank you, Graeme. Another question. It could be for both of you, actually. We need to get Cyber Essentials, but don't really know where to start. So, yeah.
Okay. If you've not done this before, then it can be quite a daunting process. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can go onto the National Cybersecurity website and you can download a toolkit that can help you. You can download the forms from there, or you can get in touch with CFA, who will put you in touch with myself, or you can come directly to me and we can help you to start the process. One of the things about the basic form is not so much what you put into it, it's how you answer the questions. So as I said before, there are no grey areas. There's a right and a wrong answer. And if you don't know how to answer the questions, it can be quite daunting and can take you a long, long time. So I would suggest giving me a shout and I'll help you through it.
Thank you, Chris. Is there anything you'd like to add, Graeme, or you?
No, I mean, like Chris said, there's quite a lot of jargon. So when you first look at the documents, if you're not, particularly IT minded or don't have a lot of experience with that, it can be quite daunting, as Chris says. So it's useful to have someone that can sort of interpret that for you and really help you understand what it's asking for. So there's always worth giving us a call or giving Chris a call before diving into the assessment, just to make sure you've got things as right as you can beforehand.
Thank you, Graeme. We'll put the contact details up again at the end of this webinar, so if anyone missed those, they can jot them down again. Another question: how long does the assessment itself take? Not just the time to get accredited. Chris, could you?
That's a difficult one to answer, and it depends on, are we talking about Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus?
Can we answer both?
Okay,
or maybe Plus.
So we'll start with the Cyber Essentials because that's the first one. So depending on you answer all the questions on the form, then those questions then have to be taken from the form and put into the portal. Once they're in the portal, it will then depend again on how busy the assessors are. If I'm doing it, I can normally get you through same day or next day because I have access to the assessors to speak to them. And also if there's any issues, they come back to me and I have the chance to rectify them. If you do it direct, you don't have that facility. So it could be quite a long-winded and an expensive process, because if you keep failing, you've got to pay the £300 or, depending on the size of the company, assessment every time you do it. So I would recommend you come to us. It's a lot simpler, and I'll have you through inside a couple of days. The Cyber Essentials Plus is a little bit more difficult. It has to be scheduled. It depends if we're doing a pre-assessment test first. But normally the test is done within inside a day. And we'll know more or less straight away whether you've passed or you've failed. But again, if you fail and you don't have the pre-assessment test, then you will have to pay for the test again. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, a question from JT this time. How does the security update management work when there are known issues with the MS patches every month?
Great question. So on user devices, you have to have auto update set for immediately, because the patches don't tend to affect laptops. However, on servers, it becomes a different matter. And I think that the current regulations are you have 7 days to implement a security one and a high. The rest of them can be sandboxed. They can be tested and then implemented before you go for assessment. But my recommendation would be that anything that is done in the last 7 days implemented before you go for the assessment, unless you know there's a known problem. So you get it all up to date before we start the assessment, and then you go for the assessment themselves. But yes, I do understand that Windows patching, particularly on servers, can be problematic, shall we say.
Thank you. Okay. And a question from Jason this time. Can you just give a definition of a user? What is the definition of a user?
Anybody who is accessing your system. And I did notice that it does mention consultants or long-term contractors. If they are accessing your network, then yes, they become part of Cyber Essentials scope for any reason. If they're just getting emails, then it's not so bad. But if they're accessing data on your network, then they are in scope.
Okay, lovely. I think another question from Jason here, actually. Can you expand on how a personal laptop, also used for business, would be handled with Cyber Essentials?
Well, then it becomes a bring your own device, and it must have the same controls as a company laptop. So it must be up to date. It must have all the latest software that is in support, and it must have antivirus software installed with the same controls as you have internally.
Thank you very much. Just give me a moment. I'm just getting up to date. Okay. A question from Abid. As part of the annual due diligence process, Abid's company asked for proof that certain security settings are in place. For example, prove autoplay is disabled. If we hold Cyber Essentials, isn't this proof that all appropriate security settings are activated?
No, because Cyber Essentials is a one-off test, and it is of the moment when you fill in the form. So if you, at the time of filling the form in, say that all these controls are in place, they might not be in place 6 months later.
Okay, thank you very much. I know, Graeme, you've addressed this already, but just in case anyone's missed that on the questions box. Anthony says, we use Centre for Assessment for our 9001 accreditation, and we already have Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, which was obtained via our IT service provider. If we were to change the assessor to CFA, who would conduct the assessment?
We wouldn't, at the moment, we wouldn't be able to have the same assessor for ISO and Cyber Essentials. They're very different schemes, and they're run completely separately. So whereas all the various ISO standards, even though they're diverse, there's a lot of commonalities between them and the way that they're administered through UCAS and so on. And Cyber Essentials is completely separately administered by IASME. So there will be people that are Cyber Essentials practitioners and ISO auditors, but it's not really as common as having someone that does several ISO standards. So we've got a separate pool of assessors basically for Cyber Essentials who specialise in Cyber Essentials, and we don't have anyone that's doing both at the moment. I don't think for 9001 and Cyber Essentials. Oh, we do have an assessor who does 27001 and Cyber Essentials actually. Indeed. But yeah, it's unlikely to be the same assessor, but also it's a bit of a different. The nature of the assessment is a bit different as well, because as Chris mentioned earlier, it's all done remotely, whereas with an ISO audit, in the majority of cases, there's going to be some on-site time as part of that audit, whereas the Cyber Essentials assessment is quite a different process, really. You can't tie the two together.
Can I just come in as well? Cyber Essentials assessment are done by IASME accredited assessors. If you come to me for consultancy, I do not do the assessment. The assessment is done by a separate company. They're completely independent.
Lovely. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have a question from Janet. If Cyber Essentials is of the moment, is it worth anything? How does it add value or prove anything?
Good question. It proves that at that particular moment in time, just like any assessment really, that you have taken the controls and you've put the controls in place. I think the hope is that the controls will be put in place and they will be maintained, because Cyber Essentials is an annual assessment. So that's the hope, is that they'll just be, you will keep the standard throughout the course of the year until the next one is due. But you're right, if things change and you don't maintain that, then nobody will know, because there's no regular checks.
I think just to add to that, I suppose doing it, if assuming that it's something that someone wants to continue with year on year, even if you're updating the controls once a year and making sure you're compliant once a year, that's better than not doing it at all. And I think the scheme really, as we've said, it's a government-backed scheme, and it's really trying to help businesses. It's not trying to be onerous. It's trying to help people do the basics that they can to stop the most common cyber attacks. So it's as a scheme, it's helped a lot of businesses just think about these basic things, and the fact that it's in their minds is a benefit, really. Even if you can't guarantee 3 months later that every one of those controls is still in place, it's still a better situation than you might have had before, essentially. At least you've as an organisation that's got the accreditation, someone knows, a supplier or a client or whatever knows that you've actually taken the time to look at all these policies and go through the process.
Thank you, Graeme. Just back down now to Sebastian. He's asked about laptops across the organisation using software not necessary or outdated. How do you enforce it? Kind of considering a mix of Windows, Macs, Linux.
Basically, there isn't any way to enforce it, but by turning on auto updates, it means it will update your device whenever new updates come out. That's the only real way that we can test. And if you're going for the plus, they will test that auto updates are enabled, and they will test that you have all the latest software. Really, that's the only way that it can be tested. You could put central software on that will control all of this, and that will help you to ensure that you're up to date. But it depends on the size of your organization, whether you want to go down that route and whether it is cost effective.
Thank you, Chris. Sebastian asked again about malware virus protection. Is it mandatory for Linux machines to use Chrome and Mac, he said?
No, you can use whatever browsing software that you like. Malware, if you are using Linux, then malware will be on the Linux servers, so you'll be covered that way. If you are only using your devices to access the Linux or the thin client, then there are no requirements to have any malware on your PCs, because in effect they are dumb devices. But if they are accessing the internet out with Linux, then yes, they have to have them.
Okay.
But as long as they're using the latest version of Chrome, then it's fine. Or you can use Firefox, you can use Microsoft Edge, you can use whatever browser you want, as long as it's the latest version.
Thank you very much, Chris. Maybe a question for you, Graeme. How long does the certification last for? Is it an annual assessment? I think we've addressed this, but just for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And annual assessment. So it lasts for a year, either certification. So the self-assessment, once you've got that, that's valid for a year, and you can claim that for a year. And the same with the plus as well. And there's also an online certification register on the government or IASME website, so you can check if the certification is valid as well. And that's central across all any Cyber Essentials accredited organisation is on there.
Thank you, Graeme. Okay, that's sort of all the questions that we have had put to us. We will just give 30 seconds or so, just in case anybody does have any further questions. But yeah, if not, thank you very much. Any further questions, please just shout now. If not, no, thank you very much. Okay, well, that does bring the webinar to a close. We'd like to thank everyone for their time today and hope that you got all you needed from the session. Thank you again to Chris and Graeme for their time. We really appreciate it. If you have any further questions, then please do either contact us at Centre for Assessment or reach out to our speakers directly. Details on the screen now. We'd be delighted to hear your thoughts, so please do get in touch with any feedback you have. We'd be very grateful for that. And we will be in touch with you to provide some further reading and more kind of some more details on Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus that you may need. So please look out for this. But that's it for today. Thank you again. Really appreciate your time. Have a good rest of the week. Hopefully see you soon. Bye bye.
Thanks very much, Harry.
Yes, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.